Welcome back to the Talking Archive. My name is Josh Jacobs. We're talking with Jeff Davis, and last time he mentioned a whole lot of personalities from WLS's nearly 100 years of history and the archives that Jeff himself is making to preserve that history. And it inspires me to think, what else can we do for other radio stations around the country to preserve their history and their focus? And it was interesting you mentioned Rex Allen, because I first heard the name. There was a website years ago called the Extinct Attractions Club, and they did tributes to different Disneyland and Disney World rides that are no longer there. And Rex Allen was the voice of the father in the original General Electric Carousel of Progress at Disneyland. And then in the early 70s, when it moved to Disney World, Rex Allen was slighted, and they had somebody else voicing the dad when they did the new production. However, Disney did redeem themselves and gave Rex Allen a role as the grandfather in the revamped Carousel of Progress, I think back in the 1990s, just before he passed away. I think Gene Shepard was given the voice of the dad in that production. So you had two legends there in the Carousel of Progress. And then Rex Allen Jr. did an interview with the Extinct Attractions Club talking about his dad and the history of that. So that was really neat, too. This guy interviewed people like Thurl Ravenscroft and other Disney legends who are no longer with us. So it was nice to see him interview those people as well. And that's one of the things, one of my mission statements of this podcast is to interview people and get them on record. A couple months ago, one of my coworkers was Jay Gardner, who was on KHJ and K-Earth 101. And he was telling me all these stories. He was working as a board operator here at Salem for about 2 years. And I thought, I got to get these stories on tape. So during some downtime, we talked for about 20 minutes about different things. We got about 5 interviews there. And he's going to talk to me again, but he's getting settled down in Austin, Texas. But he told me that he was the guy on Laramie who said, "Worldwide pants," and I'm doing a terrible job with that, but it had some great stories and stuff.
Yeah, Jay's great. I'll tell you, I was in Rex's living room, and our interview had gone into the evening. I actually spent a couple of days down there with him, and it had gone into the evening, and I started laughing, and he said, "What's funny?" And I said, "Here I am in your living room, and I'm hearing this wonderful voice that I have heard since I was a kid." And he says, "Well, I was just thinking that about your voice."
Wow.
And it made me laugh even more. And I said, "Believe me, your voice has really got a lot more character than mine does." But he truly was Rex Allen was a wonderful man. And I really knew all about what happened to him when he died. And as a matter of fact, I called over there, and his assistant was in tears. She was crying because she backed over him, and she was so upset. And I said, he might have already been dead when you did that. And what had happened was that he told her that he wasn't feeling well, and he wanted to go to the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
To the hospital, I guess. So she went and got the car, and she backed the car out over him. He had gone out. I think he might have been smoking a cigarette, which is the last damn thing he should have been doing.
Mm-hmm.
But it just really destroyed her.
Mm.
She was just crying like crazy. I felt bad. And then when they had the memorial for him out at his home where he was born, I went out there and I brought some CDs. I made some CD. I have the CD duplicator and a really nice not laser, but it uses high resolution graphics on it on
Mm-hmm.
the disc. And I created a collector's item, and I brought them about 20 discs they could sell at the Rex Allen Museum there. That day they had there were just so many people there. Rex Allen Jr. was there, and they had this little theater, a little dinky theater, and it was really very small. And they had a big screen TV they showed old Rex Allen TV shows. He had he did have he actually owned the masters to this, I think it's called Pioneer Doctor or something like that. And I think he did a whole bunch of those. But he did 21 movies.
Wow.
And he told me that Don't Go Near the Indians, which was his big hit that crossed over. He wasn't originally supposed to do that song. It was originally supposed to be done by another country musician, a country singer, and I'm spacing his name right now.
By the way, the Rex Allen Museum is still there. They got a Facebook page, and the website is, let's see, rexallenmuseum.org. It's in Wilcox, Arizona.
Yeah.
And it's on 150 North Railroad Avenue. And so the latest update they put on Facebook was on September 13th, so it's good to know it's still there.
It is great. Next time I drive through there, sometimes I drive to Oklahoma. Next time I drive through there, I'll stop by.
Oh, definitely.
But it's really a neat little place, the little museum they've got there, and it's nice that he's remembered because he truly was a great guy. Back in the 1940s when he was at WLS, he had a bad eye. His left eye, I believe might have been his right eye, I can't remember, but he had one eye that was crooked. It was off-center. And the performers at WLS took up a collection and paid for surgery to fix his eye. And,
wow.
that kind of thing went on back in those days. You didn't just work with people, they were family. And WLS, in its later years, held to that. Certainly there were times when people were not as tight as they were when Rex was around, or for that matter, when the WLS group that I was part of was around, because we were there as not for just 1 year, it was a period of years.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to know each other and got to have a lot of fun. I just thoroughly love Fred Winston. I mean, he never fails to make me laugh, and he's just a good guy. Big photography now. Photography is very big on him right now. He loves doing it, and he's good at it.
Mm-hmm.
But all of these people, they're just normal people in abnormal circumstances, making a living, sometimes screwing up and sometimes succeeding to enormous success.
Oh, yeah. It's funny because LAradio.com, when it was more active, I mean, it still kind of is, but it was kind of nice to see people being generous with other DJs who were in need when it was a daily, blog and stuff. Because I remember a couple of DJs that were struggling. One in particular, she's now gone, Shauna, who had been KHJ, KLOS, K-Rock, and KLSX. She had been struggling, and so Bob Coburn, I remember giving her a job with Rockline when he heard the news about her struggling financially. I thought, man, I only met BC once, but he was a cool guy when I met him, and that brought the cool factor up right there. But that's just one example. There was others as well that I can't remember right now, but that was one in particular that really just this is neat.
Radio people are a special breed. I mean, they really are. We live and breathe it very often. Sometimes maybe a little too much, especially if you get in a mixed group and they get tired of you talking about it. But there is a level of compassion that comes with that is part of the reason why you succeed, is because you're compassionate about that. You can place that in anything where people are wrapped up in it, painters, writers who get compassionate about their work. They excel when they're compassionate about it. But I remember my first radio job, Jim Cassidy, that guy again, he said, radio gets in your blood, it's like VD, you can't get it out. I really do.
It's true. Once a radio DJ, always a radio DJ is kind of my thought as well. I
could go back on the air right now and sound exactly like I always sounded. You know, when we did the WLS reunions, people ask, "Are you on the air somewhere? You sound just like you normally do." And I said, "It's nothing. This is, being on the radio is like drinking water for me." And I think it's like that for most people in radio. Craig Roberts, do you know him?
Yeah, I remember he was on KRF 101 and Star 98.7, and I think I actually did meet him. Actually, the same night I met you, and Melrose Larry Green had you both on. I think it was the Melrose Larry Green show on KRLA. Melrose was I loved him. He was just, oh man, the stories that we could tell. So yeah, Craig Roberts, go ahead.
Yeah, he lives in Las Vegas now, and he does voice work for television.
Oh, okay.
And he could go on the air, and his voice still sounds like it always has. He sounds great.
Wow.
And I think that he probably would not want to go on the air, but he could and do a very good job. But radio especially in top 40, not so much in oldies formats, is really a young person's game.
Mm-hmm.
There have been isolated cases where someone who's my age would be on a top 40 radio station and they call him Uncle whoever, and he could do that, he could pull it off. But generally they want to go for young, usually good-looking people who can go out and make appearances. An older person, it's a little bit like David Lee Roth trying to go out and do a show and looks ridiculous bouncing around the stage. There's something with age that makes it not look cool anymore.
Yeah, it was interesting because, Rick Dees being on Kiss FM till he was about 55 was, oh my goodness, wow, 55-year-old man on top 40 radio. But, of course, he was gone at 55. And Ryan Seacrest is now about 48 years old. There's only a couple. Ellen Kay, I was kind of shocked that, she was still on Kiss well into her probably early 50s. Of course, she was then moved over to Coast 103.5, which is more up, her age range than Kiss was. But it was also kind of strange, to me, Ryan Seacrest and Ellen Kay being put together was kind of like the Today Show combination of Jim Hartz and Barbara Walters, where Hartz was like 10 years younger, actually 11 years younger than Walters was.
Yeah.
And though the two got along great, audiences just didn't buy it. And so by the time Walters left NBC to go to ABC to do the evening news, Hartz got let go shortly after that. And then, of course, they brought in Jane Pauley and Tom Brokaw, and then today's ratings went back up. But still, just, that's kind of how I always saw Ryan Seacrest and Ellen Kay. It's just like I just didn't buy it,
Yeah, it's funny how that works. Age does play into the marketing, and you understand that they want to relate to a certain audience, and if there's a mismatch, then your chances of relating to that audience are not good. The only way that you can get away with it, like I say, is if you have a guy who's on the air and he relates to them as with a gimmicky kind of thing, like Grandpa whatever or Uncle Joe or whatever name they give, where it becomes a bit of a shtick. But the funny thing is, if you look back at radio in the 1960s, a lot of those guys look like your dad. They really looked old to me to be on the radio, but they were, and
they weren't that old. That was the funny thing, some of them. Like, I looked at pictures of Emperor Hudson. The guy looked like he was in his 50s.
Yeah.
He was in his late 30s. I'm like, are you kidding me?
They just looked old. They looked old, Art Roberts and his sweater and all that stuff, it was just a whole different thing, even though he was probably in his early 30s at that time, back in 1963 or 64.
Yeah.
But, it's just that I think the time has a way of making it look that way because tastes change. And, some people grow into that and other people are born into it. So I don't know.
I remember.
really don't know.
I remember years ago reading an interview with Jack Nars, the game show host, Tom Kennedy's older brother, and he said that when it comes to hosting, they want you to look 21 years old and have 20 years of experience, which I thought was an interesting one. He also said somebody told him that your game show career lasts as long as your hair dye job. So you dye your hair, that's all.
Yeah.
Although his younger brother, Tom Kennedy, got away with gray hair. They said, like, the book mentioned Tom Kennedy had gray hair in 1980 on Password Plus, but in 1985 on The Nighttime Price is Right, he had dark brown hair. So, and did look about 10 or 15 years younger with that.
It does. I think some actors get away with it by just shaving their hair off altogether.
And that's true. Forget the crummy looking toupee. The worst toupee I ever saw was Tony Curtis. I'm like, it made Howard Cosell's puffy toupee from the 70s on look good by comparison.
Man. That's so true.
Oh man, it's like Ted Danson has the best toupee. That is the best rug I've ever seen.
It looks natural.
It does. Oh my goodness, I was like shocked when I found out he wore one. It's like, what? No, he doesn't wear a toupee. And then sure enough, a couple of years later, he stopped wearing it. I was like, oh my goodness, he does wear a toupee.
God almighty. The beat goes on, though.
Yes, it does.
Beat goes on.
This is the Talking Archive. My name is Josh Jacobs. We're talking with Jeff Davis, and next time we'll discuss his time at KRF 101 and how that paved the way to his voiceover career.